Some lovers try positions that they can't handle. That is the mnemonic I want you to keep in your mind as we're going through and learning the 8 carpal bones, or the 8 bones of the wrist. And we're going to be using this 100% free Kenhub article. You will find a link down in the description below. I encourage you to follow along because there is some really cool stuff to see here. So I'm just going to kind of scan down, and what we are immediately going to see is the location of the wrist. And you might be like, Justin, I know where my wrist is. I don't need to know this. However, a lot of people don't understand what actually is the wrist. I don't know if I said that the right way. Because, let's say you break your wrist, right? It is far more likely that you are breaking part of the radius or the ulna than you are breaking a carpal bone. Now, that doesn't mean you didn't. I'm just saying that that's the more likely thing. Now, you do not want to be that person, right? Nobody wants to be that guy where it's like, I broke my wrist, and it's like, actually, you broke your radius. No one wants that. Don't be that person. It's not a good look. However, we need to understand the wrist itself are the 8 bones inside of the carpus, right? The carpus is the region between the radius and the ulna, and then the metacarpals, which are the long bones that are deep to your palm. And so that's where our focus is going to be. So as we come on down here, you can see all the stuff that is just baked into our articles here. We get to see this first atlas image, and what you are looking at here is the scaphoid bone. Now, what we're going to do is break this down in rows. There are 2 rows. There's what's called the proximal row, and then there's what's called the distal row. And if you think about it, right, proximal and distal are all about appendages, basically. It's saying how close are you to the point of origin. So another way of saying that is, are you closer to the shoulder than you are, or are you farther away from the shoulder? At least if we're talking about the upper limb. And what my point here is, if you're looking at these bones here, right, so what we're going to see is that there are bones that are much, you can see, here's 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't look like it, but here's the 4th one, then 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then what happens is there's going to be this little hook that's coming off of this one. Well, if you look at it, we have 4 of the bones that are closer to the ulna and radius, and then 4 bones which are farther away. So that is going to be our proximal and distal row. So we are looking at the proximal row right here, and the first one is the scaphoid. So the scaphoid is the most likely carpal bone to be broken. If you do break your wrist, actually break your wrist, this is probably what you broke. And this typically happens because you're falling out on an outstretched hand, landing, and the pressure just goes right to it, because this is the one that is directly articulating with the radius. Now, our next bone, called the lunate, is also going to be doing that, but still, you just want to keep that in mind, that this is going to be primarily and mostly interacting with the radius. Now, so in terms of our mnemonic, remember, some lovers try positions that they can't handle. Some is the scaphoid. So next, we have the lunate. Lunate, in reference to being lunar, because it is moon-shaped. This one is going to be articulating with both the radius, and it can articulate with the ulna here. And this is going to be the next in our proximal row. Then after that, we meet the triquetrum. So the triquetrum, you're seeing a small portion of it here. What's nice is we're actually going to be able to see the dorsal view of the hand here in just a moment. But this is, you can see it kind of peeking back here. And I think this is important to understand. This goes to show how small this next bone is. So the triquetrum is right there. And then we get the pisiform. So the pisiform is commonly described as this green pea-shaped or pea-shaped bone, because it is tiny. It's very spherical. It's just like this little globe that's going to be right in there. And again, by the way, if I wasn't clear on this, we are looking at a palmar view, right? This is you're looking at the palm here, because we're going to be able to see this on the dorsal side as well. So, but you can see that, if I go away from this now, let's go back actually. If you look at this, at first you might be like, is that one bone? Or what's going on there? But as you look closely, you will be able to see that it does indeed have 2 bones here. Again, we have the triquetrum, which is a mouthful to say, triquetrum, and then we have the pisiform. So again, with our mnemonic, this would go, scaphoid would be some, lunate would be lovers, triquetrum would be try, which works, triquetrum, try, positions would be pisiform. All right, so some lovers try positions. These 4 bones are the proximal row. So what we're going to do is real quickly look at this from a dorsal view, and we can see the scaphoid. So I would mean like you're looking at the, I don't know, back of your hand, top of your hand, however you want to look at it. So this is going to be the scaphoid, and then we can see the lunate, and then we can see more of that triquetrum. We can't see the pisiform from this view because it's small and it's on the palmar side, but we can actually zoom in on it and you can see this bone right here. So you can see how it is highlighted here in green, but again, this is going to be our proximal row. And so our goal now is to shift to the dorsal row of our carpal bone. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. You can see how these articles are built. We kind of break down each one of those bones, telling you as much as you really need to know about that area. And then what we see is this really cool image that has much more than just the carpal bones inside of it. What it has is all of these other bones. It has like radius and the ulna, the metacarpals. It even goes over the digits. And it's just really nice, even giving you information around the different parts of those bones, like the base, the body, the head of the metacarpals, so on and so forth. But we're going to go down. And as you can see here, we now are going to be focusing on that distal row. So I'm going to go ahead and enlarge this, and now we can start focusing on that distal row. And so first what we're going to see is what's called the trapezium. Trapezium, it kind of like similar to like because it's a trapezoid type of shape. However, it's not quite a trapezoid shape because watch this real quick. We have a bone called the trapezoid. So, but they both have very similar shapes to themselves is where they get that name. Like you can think of trapezius, right? It's all based around the shape. But in order to discern between the trapezoid, they decided to call this the trapezium itself. And so the first one is trapezium, and then we get the trapezoid. This is very easy to confuse, but again, we're going to use this in our mnemonic in just a moment. Then from there, we get what's called the capitate. This is the largest of all the carpal bones. And you can, this thing is pretty massive. Now, it's not to say that others aren't that big, but it is definitely more massive. In fact, a lot of times, though, people will even think that the trapezoid is this tiny little bone, but in reality, it's like when we see this from the dorsal side, it's actually bigger than you may think it would be. But then the last bone is what is called the hamate. Now, the hamate has a hook to it. And this hook is also going to work really well with the trapezium. There's going to be a tubercle on the trapezium that you can't see all that well here. It's going to be right in this area here. But there is this hook between the hook of there's the hook of the hamate, and then there's the tubercle on the trapezium. And this is where a tissue called the transverse carpal ligament is going to be attaching to. And what that does is it helps create this bridge where you're going to have 9 tendons traveling through, as well as a nerve called the median nerve, creating what is known as the carpal tunnel. But so there's like this little hook portion here, and it's called the hook of the hamate. So we now have that they can't handle. That is trapezium. They is trapezoid. Can't is capitate. And handle is hamate. So some lovers try positions that they can't handle. Again, that is going from the proximal row towards that distal row, and also this is always going from the thumb side or digit 1 down over towards digit 5. But let's go ahead and look at this from a dorsal view, and once again we can see the trapezium here. And then we can also see the hook. They're highlighting the hook of the hamate. We can see just a little bit of a different view than we saw before. Right? It's kind of like an oblique angle, 45-degree angle on the hand. Now, so the carpal bones are interesting. Now, by the way, there are 7 bones in the foot and in the ankle. We call those the tarsal bones. We are going to probably have to make a video on that soon. But I just want to just real quick show you just what else are going to be in these articles. Again, there's going to be a link down in the description. I strongly encourage you to look at it. And you can see there's other mnemonics. You can see whenever we have a nifty mnemonic, we like to place them in the article. And you can see that this one says, she likes to play, try to catch her. That is another one I have found probably a good dozen or so mnemonics over the years for just the carpal bones. And you just got to do and use what works for you. For me, some lovers try positions that they can't handle is what I've always gone off of, so that's what I'm going to do. But you can see we also right here have our quizzes embedded inside of the article. Now this is a premium feature, but this is, I just want to say, the absolute best way to learn your anatomy. And what we like to do is if you select the quiz mode, you can actually go ahead and get quizzed on the material for that particular article. So like, for example, I'm going to go ahead and do this. We're not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of show you how this works. I'm going to push start quiz, and what's going to happen, you're going to see it's going to load it up and get it all ready, and then boom, you can see that it's starting to show us parts of this. You can see like which image shows carpal bones, and then what you got to do is choose which one. So I chose a study exam or a study quiz, and these quizzes are built to teach you as you are taking those quizzes, whereas our exam quizzes are more so about testing your knowledge and seeing how that works. And what you can see is you click it, it shows green, and then it's going to go to a different image, and this time it's asking for the metacarpals. You click on it, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and come up here and stop this. Just want to let you know this is an amazing premium feature. You can even see your progress on this, and you can move towards improving on your previous scores. And you can see like there's even going to be this little circle that says I have 100% to learn, so I better get working on that. But and you can also see just different clinical relations that we like to put in these articles whenever we find one that is helpful. But hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to give this video a like and head down to the comment section and leave us a comment. Let us know what other structures or organs or you name it you would like us to discuss in future videos. The last thing we want to do is make a video that you don't want to see. So show us what makes the most sense, tell us, and we will be happy to make a video. But again, thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.